Hi, welcome to another one. Water Cooler Live. Oh, got Paul join us right away. Great, Paul. Good to see you, buddy.
Hey Steve, happy Wednesday. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Awesome. Yeah, good to see you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I let me just make sure that I've actually clicked the go live on Facebook because it gets a little bit hairy otherwise. Let's have a look here, just real quick. Go live so that it's recorded there. Great. Yeah, I'm
Cool.
doing I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Yeah, actually, genuinely, sometimes people ask you the question and you have to kind of you have to kind of temper it according to the audience, right?
Yeah,
Are they are they really asking you how you're doing?
yeah.
Or they
I think it's so funny that you say that because that was one of the biggest things that I learned is that when you're just interacting with people, like when people use the word fine or I'm doing
mm,
good, like more often than not, they aren't. So I always told myself, like, if somebody asked me that question, I would I would be honest, but like I'd be tactful about it. Like if my day
yeah,
is like terrible and all that type of stuff, I wouldn't tell them like, oh, it's like the worst day ever. I would just say, I've had better days or
yeah,
whatever it is. And I just think that part of and one of the big conversations that we talk all the time on this show is like distinguishing reality from the online space, right? Like
mm,
actual everyday like real life versus like what you see online. And that's been kind of like one of my biggest things this year, especially like taking so much time away from social media and online where I've like practically, I don't want to say lived, but I've invested a good amount of time over the past like couple years,
yeah,
has been like putting the real back in reality, right? Because it's like
yeah,
I feel everybody goes through a lot of challenges and those seasons of not so great stuff, but based off of what you see on social, especially like a lot of the people that you look up to and all that type of stuff, like people aren't talking about the good, bad, and ugly, as I like to
mm,
say. And so often when you only see like the good, the positive things, it's just kind of like I was never a big fan of that word like toxic positivity because it's just like it's one of those oxymoron words. Like
yeah,
how can you
yeah,
say toxic and positive in the same? But I understand like what people mean about like being positive, and that's why for me like I look at it as like being optimistic because it's like you're acknowledging kind of like where you are, but you are hoping and
yeah,
you're thinking about like better than where
yeah.
you are type of
You,
thing.
yeah, you
So
don't have to
yeah,
stay there. Yeah, it's a lot of a lot of my recent thinking has been definitely impacted or influenced by sort of Stoic philosophy. So,
mm,
which looks at it spends a lot of time looking at at the present circumstance in its in its raw form,
yeah,
uncoated, unfiltered, not unfiltered, just yeah, seeing things for what they really are, and making an assessment um, with um, with a much more clarity, I guess, without it being
yeah,
sort of tainted. Social media does that, and like I said, toxic positivity. Um, yeah, that the positivity can be intoxicating
mm,
for sure. People get I can get intoxicated by it too, and sometimes the negativity can be toxic too, can
yeah.
be intoxicating. The whole doom scrolling sort of thing that we can find ourselves in. But this is the time of the year where we kind of I guess I've got the Christmas special. I've got Christmas special on the bottom of my screen there, but because I'm just realizing how quickly Christmas is coming. Uh, it's like this last 3 months of the year has really flown. Um, so yeah, I won't be here next Wednesday. I'll be in the air this time uh, on the way to Jamaica. So super excited for that. And then I might show up I don't know. It depends. I might show up as a live one day while I'm there, just kind of pop in and say hi. Um, I'm looking forward to just seeing everybody and some sunshine and also possibly get a chance to see some of the island in terms of the impact and if there's ways that I can help. I know that um, lots of organizations on the ground that are trying to support people get their lives, right sided again after Melissa. Um, it only takes one news cycle for people to forget about a hurricane when you got to sort of live through all of the aftermath and the cleanup and everything else. But so on the whole, fairly positive about it. Are you a Christmas person, Paul?
It's it's funny, like, so growing up, like, I grew up with my grandparents, right? They're very kind of like old school, so a lot of I remember like being the party pooper, sort of like, about the whole Santa thing. I was always kind of like, when I was little, and then one day like I caught like my parents, and I was like, oh, so it's like, you're Santa Claus type of thing. But I think for me, like, the I don't like the conditional nature of the holidays, like, with
Mm,
how, I don't want to say everything's like amplified, but I just feel like with
mm,
holidays in general, everything's like amplified. And then when
yeah.
you factor in the fact that like Christmas is so like commercialized, very
Mm,
rarely do people ever talk about like the whole point of like spending time with family and
yeah.
getting to do that type of thing. It's always about like the gifts or the parties and all this type of stuff. And I mean, I guess for me, I always just kind of looked at it as like another day or
Mm,
holiday. I mean, it has the religious component, if you
hmm.
will, but yeah, I think growing up with my grandparents, I was kind of, after I turned like 12, a lot of like things that a lot of people consider like special for me just became like ordinary stuff. Like,
Yeah.
um, Thanksgiving was really kind of like the big holiday growing up, just because it was when kind of like the whole family would come together, and
Right.
those were always the holidays that I liked. But as I got older, I was just like, wait, isn't every day is like Thanksgiving type of thing? And
Mm,
it wasn't until I started practicing gratitude, where I've always said for the longest time, like, oh, I feel like every day should be Thanksgiving, but I
yeah.
never really lived that kind of mindset or mantra. And then
Mm,
once I started practicing gratitude, I understood that it was all about finding like silver linings. And if you can do that, like, especially when times are tough, then
yeah.
you'll kind of make it through everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting though. Like, I do like Christmas time, just because it's so different from Florida than Hawaii. Like,
Mm.
we never really got to experience the weather change. Like, when it's pretty cold right now, it's right here. You don't see
Okay.
me in a tank top, but um
Mr. Whiskey.
yeah. But the winter time is so interesting, and I think too, it just has a neat component, because last year was like the first time, and I want to say it was probably like 30, 40, probably 50 years that like the state of Florida got snow. We didn't get snow in Jacksonville, but I've just come from the
Yeah.
Sahara Desert back
This is
into Christmas.
hi Claire. If you can go, if you're well enough, I understand. Sorry to interrupt you there, Paul, but Claire just came back from the Sahara, so
Oh,
she's had quite a temperature change. I think she
yeah,
came
I
up with
can
a bit of a
imagine.
bug with a bit of a bug,
Oh no. Yeah,
but
it'd be that sounds fascinating.
yeah.
Getting to, I would love to hear more about like her experience. And thank you, Claire, for chiming in. What a cool story. I'm sure there's a
Yeah,
lot of
there's a lot to
fascinating
that.
memories that she had on that trip. But yeah, I mean, I think the conditional nature was one of the things for me that I've been trying to shift, and just having like a, I don't want to say like a steady, but kind of like an even keel thing
Hmm.
all the time. And that's what happens a lot in like pickleball. Like, a lot of times if you just looked at like my mood and my attitude, like you couldn't tell whether I won or whether I lost, because it's like
Right.
I just try to keep it the same. And I just think there's so much like pressure now more than ever, because of the technology, because of like all the outside noise that people
Mhm.
have to deal with that they didn't really so much back then. And that's kind of one of the having some type of system is super important, just because it helps you kind of weed out and focus in on like what's important to you type of thing. Same with the holidays. Like if you're not present and focused on like what you want to do, it's so easy to get caught up and compare yourself to what other people are doing. Oh, I see she joined us. I
Yeah.
will let her share about her journeys to
That's
the
great. Claire,
Sahara Desert.
good to see you. You're back safe and
Hi.
sound.
Yeah, that was weird because I was sitting waiting on the live and then it popped up and then
Oh,
nothing happened. And I thought, then I refreshed and there you were.
okay.
So
Good.
yeah.
Good to see you. Welcome, Paul. Meet Claire.
Hello,
She's in
Paul.
She's in the
Hi.
UK. She's a bit closer to me than you are, but but yes. So Claire, tell us a bit more about this Sahara. I had a question in mind. I had a question in mind. I'll stick it up on the caption. Yeah, tell us. I saw the post and trekking across the Sahara, and then came up with a travel bug, which is actually an infection rather than.
Yeah.
How are you feeling?
I'm not feeling too bad actually. I think some of the other people in the group are feeling worse than I was.
Oh.
Somebody else said, "Oh yeah, I've got the travel bug as well," which is kind of, as I said in my post, inevitable when you're traveling and you've got to sit for, what was it, 3.5 hours
Yeah.
on a plane. And then we had 2 transfers. The other one was just over an hour. And then I got the coach home and then I got the bus. And yeah, it's just, there's a lot of germs about this time of year. And then I got a message from my mum saying, don't catch flu. So I thought, oh, that's all I need just before Christmas. So
dear. So what was the impetus behind the trip? Is that something you wanted to do, or
one of the other things that I do, one of my other hats, as well as my own business, is I'm trustee for a very small cancer charity. So there were 23 of us in all on the trip, but there were 9 of us from the charity who were fundraising.
Okay.
And 3 of us are trustees. 2 of the other trustees says, yeah, I'm signing up to do this at the beginning of the year. And I thought, no, I'm not good on heat in the desert and it's going to be hard. And then I thought, well, if they're doing it and I'm not getting any younger, so why not? So I did. So I signed up as well.
Fantastic. So what was it, a challenge? You walk the distance, or you?
Yeah, we had 100 kilometers to do over 5 days. And so you're walking every day.
Yeah.
And in a mixture of, actually, I wouldn't say it was that hot. It was hot. We did have a couple of days when it was hot and it was hard work, but you're walking for sort of 6, 7, 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
Took a break around lunchtime, and it's hard walking. Lots of different surfaces. Most of it kind of looked like Mars. You've just got these immense flat landscapes, and there's a few pictures I was just digging out, and you can kind of see where our camp is, and there's this little sort of speck, and it's like, that's where the camp is.
Wow.
And then you just keep walking and walking. You think, oh, it's 30 minutes away, and 2 hours later you're slowly getting closer.
That's amazing. I mean, I guess there's fewer references for distance when you're in that sort of expansive space. So you think things are close. Think, oh, it's not that far, but in actual fact, everything is.
It was quite a long way, and we had, I think, the first 3 days were probably the hardest, and we did have sand. It wasn't all sand, but there was sort of very rocky, very pebbly, dried riverbeds, few sand dunes interspersed with other bits and pieces. And we were camping as well, so you're not staying in a nice comfortable hotel at the end of the day, you're camping. Actually, the camp was reasonably comfortable. We were really well looked after, but you're not getting a lot of sleep, and then you've got to get up early to get started. And it's very cold in the desert.
Yes, there's no cover.
So you're kind of dropping down to, and I think I noticed just as we were coming back, it was colder where we were in Morocco. When we got back to the hotel for the last night, such as it was, because again we had a really early start. We had to be on the buses at 5 a.m. to get to the airport.
Wow.
It was colder there than it was here in the UK.
Yeah.
So you were probably down to, it certainly felt like 2 degrees at some points.
Ooh.
And it was cold overnight, and then you're walking for 2-3 hours when it's still quite cold, and slowly sort of taking the layers off, and then it's hot, and and then it cools down again. But yeah, amazing experience, and a lovely group, really, really lovely group of people.
Wow.
So yeah, now just getting on to fundraising to hit my target, which is the next thing to do.
Fantastic.
And sipping, I'm on lemon tea at the moment.
Yeah, share the link.
My Moroccan mug.
I'll definitely repost that. What was one of the surprising revelations from the trip you didn't expect to learn? Or
I think it was there were so many things, and actually just thinking, relating to what you do and who you work with, we had a group of guys on the trip. There were 7-8 of them who, I think it was the stories that we got coming through, and that's actually something that we do, because the Odyssey charity, who I was fundraising for, we do experiences of the outdoors. So it was kind of, we do a mini version of that. So it's the stories that come out of all the different charities people were fundraising for, because it wasn't all the same one. Their stories of how they'd got there, what it meant to them. It might have been something personal for themselves. It might have been something to do with sort of family or friends. But the guys on the trip, and as I said, really, some of them you would not want to meet on a dark night. They can definitely look after themselves, but some of the stories they were coming out with about their lives, and I think it was so nice to hear that, because, and one of the conversations I had with a couple of them, the younger guys, is men don't have that same chance to just talk and chat and offload that women tend to. I mean, we were all chatting away and talking about all sorts of things on the trip, as women are wont to do, particularly women of a certain age.
Certain age, I love that.
And also there was the
everyone's
very
a certain age,
because you're out in the desert and things are pretty basic. So there was a lot of that sort of talk going on as well amongst everyone in the group. But yeah, I think it was just that. I don't know whether that surprised them as well. But it was just really nice to hear some of the stories that were going around. So I think that was the surprising part. The other surprising part was that I managed it without getting a blister. So
congratulations.
So that was good. We did have some horrendous blisters on the trip, and again there was some fairly gruesome footage of that going around in the photos. So
yeah, that's tough. That's tough.
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah, it's interesting. I guess it's nice. I'm thinking of the metaphor of the layers coming off, and actually some of the veneers, people telling their stories, they feel they can come out from behind whatever the veneer is of, sort of social things, or, the group that you're with, and feeling that you can be open and have that sort of vulnerability, or just that deeper connection, because you're on a quest together.
Yeah, and I think that was the big shared thing, because we were all saying how lovely everyone in the group was, and I think because you've chosen to go on something like that, you're going to be a certain type of person, and also the sort of the opportunity to talk, because as I said, you're walking for quite a long period of time, and you're chatting with different people as you walk, and you kind of end up talking to everybody and getting there. What's the charity you're fundraising for? And then the conversation just flows from there, really. As to why it's important to that. So I think it's things like that, and I've done other charity challenges, and it's that shared experience and the ability to be away from social media in particular, which we were for most of the time. Some people were sort of straight on it. Not a lot of signal out in the desert, as you can imagine, although sometimes more than you expected. I kind of was in airplane mode the whole time, and that was nice to just be able to step back and not worry about everything else, or even think about everything else that's going on back at home, and what's happening in the news, and all those things. That's
beautiful. I had a thought I had a thought to share, and it escapes me. But I'll put this up there. I had this question, and um, I'll leave that up there. Do you conform or celebrate at Christmas? I think it's tying into a little bit what Paul was
What
saying
Paul was
about.
saying, yeah.
But it is interesting that we're in that time of the year where there feels that pressure to conform, to fall into line with either the commerciality with it or even the religiosity of it. There's a lot of people are actually going attending religious festivals, but they only go at certain times of the year.
Yeah.
So there's that, so that conformity element, or celebrating. I mean, I'm looking forward to my first Christmas in Jamaica ever. I don't think
Oh,
I've ever,
really? Yeah, I heard
yeah,
you saying you were going
ever.
there.
So
Wow.
I don't know what it's going to be like. I mean, my mom's a churchgoer, and she's a Baptist, and we'll no doubt attend one or two services, and that's fine. I profess a faith, and I'm happy to lean into those celebrations and those things around this time of the year. But it does feel like, with its commerciality and the pressure that brings, in terms of having to get the place ready. This background is the only celebrate only things I have up. I've got no I've got no tree. I've got no tinsel in the window. I've got no decorations up for Christmas. My backdrop is the only decoration I have. Um, but at the same time, you can carry a connection in your heart, and certainly I feel for people that are um, finding it tough this time of the year, with the weather and with the circumstance and the added pressure, I guess, of people that wanted to conform. So I don't know.
Mm.
Just thought I'd put that up there in terms of questions. If there's any feedback in the chats, um, jump in there. But
I don't like the commercialism of Christmas and the fact
mm,
it's all about, and as you were saying, Paul, it's all about the gifts and that all the ads that are coming on. Just that's, for me, that's not what it's about. And I'm not religious, but for me, it is more about seeing family and friends and going out and having that sort of social time, which we do get together regularly at other times. So that's something that I think is special, because you're kind of doing it on steroids at Christmas, because there's that huge overindulgence. And I quite like it as a sort of an end to the year. So it's sort of
mhm,
marking off the end of the year and the start of the next one. So both on a sort of personal and work related side of things, it's a good time to have that reset.
yeah.
But yeah, all the other commercialism that goes with it, I could really do without.
Mm.
There's so much of that around.
Yeah, and I think we have to be mindful. We have to be deliberate in addressing it. In terms of calling it. I guess calling it out. I mean, what you can do about it is whatever you do in your circle of influence. It's great to get together. It's frustrating that transport is messed up. You know, I'm coming back on New Year's Day, and it's going to be a nightmare to get back from Manchester. Just because that's the time of the year everyone's taking the time off, including the transport workers.
Mm.
So that's always a thing.
Yeah, and they kind of go to Sunday service or reduced service,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
limited.
But yeah, just in terms of, I guess, yeah, I guess it's one of those things. As an adult, um, I get I burst the Santa bubble with my kids pretty early. They I mean, yeah, it was, yeah. I didn't. I guess it burst pretty early for me. Yeah, I don't even know if I ever thought of it, because we lived in a flat, and I was thinking, how is this guy going to come? How is this guy going to deliver stuff
With
to
no
me in a
chimney.
flat with no chimney? There's no way he's going to get in here, and my mom's not going to leave the door open. So it burst pretty early for me, and I think I burst it pretty early for my kids, certainly earlier than their friends, because I think they're going to school and telling people there's no Santa Claus, and other parents were like, "Ah, don't tell them." But yeah, it's important to just kind of have it mean something for you that is meaningful, and take that away from it. Certainly, it's I don't relish this time of the year because it's so cold.
Well, I kind of always think, and as I said, having come back from the Sahara and Morocco, where you're not thinking about Christmas at all, and we were all sort of thinking, oh, it's going to be so strange going back into, because we've literally got just over 2 weeks until Christmas, that there is all that sort of craziness. Although actually the lights were around, the Christmas decorations were in the shop before I went. I think they were sort of middle of November, those started appearing, get earlier and earlier each year. So yeah, it was just a discussion about what are you doing for Christmas? Are you going away? Are you staying? Yeah,
That's crazy. Was there any? I guess being in the Sahara, were you aware of any impact of climate change? I said it because you walked across riverbeds, and I'm thinking to myself,
it was very, very dry.
Yeah.
So it's really the end of the dry season there, because we were kind of saying, when do you get rain? And they said, oh, sort of any time now. I mean, I was there a long time ago. I think it was probably at a slightly different time of year. And again, I do remember it being dry, but I don't know whether if that's something that you go back to, or you've been there on a regular basis, to think the summers are hotter and drier.
Yeah.
And they were saying, and we were very much staying with a lot of the sort of the Berber areas, and our guides and all the team were Berbers, who are the desert people. Didn't really talk about that with them. There was snow on the mountains, on the Atlas Mountains. So kind of as we were driving out, you could see the snow dusting the top of the mountains. And they're high, obviously. So yeah, I don't know whether it's drier. There were quite a lot of sort of burnt palm trees as we were going through, but again, that might be something that they just do, burn the old ones. Whether the rains are coming later, how much of a difference that has made, I don't know.
Gotcha. It's just interesting when you're in parts of the earth that are very very much natural, in terms of whether you're in a rainforest. I mean, if you'd gone to the Amazon, I'd ask the same question, whether people are sensing that their nature is changing around them, whether the Sahara's getting bigger, getting drier, and seeing things because you're closer to nature, you're in those parts of the world that will give you a sort of a barometer reading of how the earth is doing, not just going into a big city and figuring that, So that
where you're very cocooned. I mean, again, that was one of the nice things about, which I do enjoy about being in the outdoors like that, is you are totally with nature. And everything that's potentially got to throw at you. There was a similar trek that was done by another group a couple of weeks before we went out, and they had really bad sandstorms, so I'm glad we didn't get that. Wow. We had a bit of wind, but avoided that.
That's crazy. I've got something bleeping at me. I wonder if that's okay. But so this is the time of the year. Anything else that's going on? Christmas is the thing. I'm excited for my travel, and I'm glad you're back safe and sound and getting better.
Thank you. I'm crocheting beanies at the moment, so I've just started another one.
Okay.
Oh wow.
That's part of my fundraising effort as well. So I was crocheting when I was out there.
Okay.
And, was getting orders coming in. So yeah,
I'll beanies put as headwear. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Wow.
So you've just started. That's what I'm gonna say. That's a small.
I've just started it.
Okay, good. I thought you were finishing it off. I was like, what?
Yeah, kiddies beanies.
No,
I've literally just started that one. So yeah, doing those to get the orders in. I can put the link. I was trying to get it into the chat, but I think is that the chat.
You can put it into the LinkedIn chat.
In the comments.
Yeah, in the comments. Okay. Yeah, in the comments there. That would be the best.
Yeah, I'll go back to that so it doesn't, because switched that off as soon
Yeah.
as I came into here, so
Oh
I
right,
wasn't
yeah,
getting
because
that
you'll hear it
sound.
twice. Yeah, you hear it twice. You hear it twice.
Yeah, get the echo.
But yeah, so do you have any? Do you have any downtime? Either of you guys have downtime over this time of the year? Are you using it for contemplation, for reflection?
I kind of use it as prep for the next year, so I quite like that. And actually, one of the things that I was just pulling together just before I went, it was how to review the end of the year. In terms of all those sort of things that you can tick off. You can tidy up the loose ends from this year and get yourself ready for the following year.
Yeah.
And I very much use that for sort of setting up. So from first week in January, because I think it's like the 5th that people will be back. So I quite like that quiet time in between.
Yeah.
So I'll spend time with family over Christmas, and then in between Christmas and New Year tends to be more with friends or just chilling out at home, relaxing, getting ready for January.
Perfect. Yeah, I was so intrigued when I was listening to you talk about like your perspective on this time of year, Claire, because when I was thinking about it, I was like, that's kind of a really nice way to look at it, is like, even if you know, whether you're not religious or whatever it is, that you can celebrate the fact that the year is kind of like ending and reflect back on the journey. And also, like, there was a book that it was kind of like a book study that one of my friends did last year, and she was talking about how like wintertime is generally like the slow time for a lot of people because it's like cold and things slow down. I think for me, like, for the most part, it's usually pretty steady across the board. I think like sometimes even the end of the year is usually a pretty crazy time for me, because that's when a lot of people are like, oh crap, like I need to get things, you know, into gear, because they realize that the year is almost over. But I really liked that perspective, because I don't think anybody's ever looked at it and kind of reframed it from that lens of end of year celebration. They just looked at it as, you know, what the holiday has been commercialized, and that's like a really nice objective way, both personally and professionally, to kind of approach it, that I feel doesn't put pressure on the holiday. So that was really interesting.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you said the colder time of the year, the winter, you know, nature slows down in a sense. You know, trees have got less leaves on it, and they're kind of they're withdrawing, if you like. They're reserving or conserving for the next season, the next cycle. And I noticed it here. I noticed it obviously more here, but being back in the UK, than I did in San Diego. San Diego's very, very, it's very temperate throughout the year. There's not much seasons, and that's probably one of its. I've heard that as one of the criticisms of great weather, is that it didn't really change. 300 days of sunshine is nice, but you don't have that seasonality. Things don't change around you as much, so you don't have nature reflecting the renewal, you know, or the hibernation or the conservation and refreshing for the next year. So that's definitely key. I know for me this year's been interesting because I did the 12-week year approach for the entire year. So I've done four cycles of the 12-week year. And it's been a revelation. I'm continuing to do it. I started the year with the premise that I would do 7 cycles, which would be a year and, you know, 18 months if you like. It happened to coincide with the calendar year. So my literally my week 1 is week 1 of the calendar year. So I'm starting again on the 28th. The 28th of December, because that's the Sunday. Because it goes into the full week there for 2026, and I'm excited to do it. It's been something that developed started on my own, and shared it, and then built a small cohort that go through the sort of the periodization of a 12-week sprint, if you like. And for me, I take every week as a month, so I think of it in that way. So I mean, this is week 11, so it's November week in my 12-week period. Gets confusing, but it's okay. I like the confusion because we're so anchored to the calendar year. And while it's good in some respects, it's not always useful in others. Academia doesn't go to the calendar year. Most companies' tax cycles don't go to the calendar year. Interesting enough, more in the US they do, but here they don't. So there are cycles there's periods that we use that are different to a traditional sort of 12-month calendar year, and you use the period that works for you. So for me, bringing down a 12-week cycle period, and then I usually have a 1-week fallow. I'll leave it fallow, like the Bible says. You got to leave the ground fallow to refresh itself, and take a week out for review, and then do it again. So I'm excited to start a new cohort on the 28th of December. You'll see posts from me all throughout the season, just kind of promoting that. But it is interesting just to kind of have a different mindset in terms of how you see a period. And like you said, Claire, I could just picture you seeing a dot on the horizon, thinking that's my camp. We're almost there. And it's like an horizon. You never get to the horizon, right? Because there's always another horizon as you look out. So seeing something in the distance and sort of going, yeah, that's what I'm going for. You work in the period in which you are actually walking or trekking, to a location. So it's very interesting. But yeah, that's an exciting thing for me. I'm definitely keen to kick that in. It's also helped with me looking back over 2025, because I don't look at 2025 as 1 year. I look at it as 4. And there's some super highlights in parts of the year that I think they stick with me more relevant, because I've got chunks in which they belong, as opposed to looking at it in terms of 12 whole months. I'm not comparing January to July, because there are things that happen in the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, or the first, second, third, fourth years that collectively make the journey worthwhile.
That's interesting. Steve, do you feel like this was the most productive year that you've ever had, like in your lifetime?
In productivity terms, I think it's a good question. I don't know. My first thought would be no, because the way you've worded the question, it's superlative, ever in my life. And I'm thinking, I've had lots of years. I've got lots of years in the belt, so in the saddle. So I'm sure there's other years that have probably been more productive. But this year has been the most. It's been the year that has excited me to reflect on the most.
Interesting. Go ahead.
Yeah, because there's a little segue. There's a guy, Matthew Dix, I think his name is Matthew Dix. He wrote the book on storytelling, and he has a program called Homework for Life, which is sort of jotting down things that are story worthy. I think is his book, and he talks about how people say time flies, and it's usually because they don't have things that they remember in their past. They don't lock in those moments. So they may think of 2 or 3 moments, and they think, well, 2 or 3 moments in the last 6 months makes it look like time flies, Whereas if you're actually building the habit of locking in the moments, time doesn't doesn't feel like it flies as much, if you like. So to answer your question about productivity, I think me remembering more of this year has made me more productive. Whether it's the most productive, there may be other factors that have made other years more productive. I remember there's yeah, I remember some years where I've had one big thing that had to happen, and it happened, and I worked towards it, or I did what I could to make it happen, and it happened. And whether that was the most productive year I had, I don't know. But this year has been the one that I remember the most, and it's been the most special to me. And not just in terms of when it's productive for me is things that fill my soul, as opposed to things that necessarily fill my bank book, or you know or business. Um,
Mm.
this year's definitely, in that respect, if that's the question, then yes, this year has been. I think I had some things that I laid out in front of me to have happen, and they happened, and
Mm.
they filled my soul. So
Yeah, that's cool. And I think like what one of the things that I really like is that at the very beginning we had kind of talked about this idea of like figuring out what things mean to you, right? Because it's like you've kind of in it sounds like you've redefined kind of like your definition of productivity, whereas like for a lot of people they think like production, like money, moving the needle type of thing.
mm,
But it seems like for you, like you have a different kind of like reframe and perspective on what productivity not just like looks like now with your kind of reframe with the 12-week year,
mm,
but also like how it feels. And I
mm,
think that's what's so fun about these conversations. And the reason why I was just curious is I feel like for me, when I go through each, especially the past like 4 or 5 years since I started practicing gratitude, I feel like I have a word that defines each year. Like the last year was probably the most, I would say, like intuitive year because I was so
mm,
focused on like listening to my own voice and practicing my intuition and all that type of stuff. And then I think about like 2022, which is probably like the most transformational or like greatest year of my life. So I think each
mm.
year has like a different I guess like adjective or way to classify it. And I'm curious for you because my we had talked about this a while ago. My mentor introduced this practice as like she calls them 90-day runs.
Mm.
So you have like four 90-day runs. And the interesting thing for me was that I felt like because things were so condensed, it made me it brought like a lot more urgency. So I was able to kind of like do more because you learn that time's really relative, but also like at the same time, I felt so rushed,
Yeah.
because it was like everything was crammed. Whereas before, I used to like appreciate each day on its own and then reflect type of thing. But when I had these 90-day runs, it was like, it almost was kind of like I didn't sort of like appreciate it as much, or I wasn't, because I was so focused on like the goal or whatever it was, I was kind of blinded to a lot of things. Whereas I feel like when I look at things now from a
Mm.
day-to-day basis, I feel like I just have so much more awareness.
Yeah.
I'm curious like if that was similar, or how do you
Well,
feel about that?
well, I'd like to hear Claire. I'd like to hear Claire's take as well, because she's got productivity coach in her title, right? But I think, I'm not speaking for her, but we're offer where people of a certain age has to take Claire's to take Claire's thought there, whereby productivity can mean so much more, and it can be a misnomer for for other people. So
Mm.
your thoughts,
And
Claire?
actually, as you were saying that, I was thinking it's how you define success. And again, this sort of thought came up, and I was just doing a post about it. Thought process of what success means to you. Is success the fast car, the big house, the millions in the bank? All these things we're being told is what success looks like? Or is it just the fact that you can finish, close your laptop and sit down and enjoy an evening with the family without getting stressed out? And when you were talking about the 90-day thing and thinking that sort of that dot in the distance is the camp we're aiming for, because I've been working on the whole 90 days, 12 weeks concept. Seeing that dot in the distance is seeing the whole year and thinking, I've got to get to that end point of the sort of camp at the end of the day. Whereas if you break it up into 4 quarters, it becomes more manageable. And you kind of break it down. So to your point, Paul, about sort of saying it can make it seem a bit bitty, it can also make it seem much more manageable, because people set their goals for the year, they've got this sort of distant endpoint they want to get to, but being able to break it down into those 90 days, 12 weeks, this is how far I'm going to be in 90 days, and then this far and this far. But it also enables you to adjust as you go, so you can be more productive. And for me, the whole thing about productivity, which kind of comes about with getting more done with the time that you have. So almost trying to sort of cram more into the time so you're super efficient, super productive. For me, that's not what it's about. It's about choosing the right things to do with the time that you've got. So that you're not ending up putting in longer and longer hours to achieve what you want, but you're being much more realistic and much more selective about what you're doing. And I think that whole 90-day process, 12 weeks, enables you to do that in a much more proactive way, rather than sort of leaving it until the end of the year, or seeing that that's too big a goal, or not having that flexibility to be able to adjust as you go.
There's a couple of things that's well, I like that. Right, I've just made a note. Right things at the right time. Right things in the right time, not more.
Right
in
choices.
Less. Right choice. Not more in less. Which just by saying getting what, if your boss walks up to you and says, "I want you to do more in less time," that's not going to feel good.
No.
And if the boss is you telling you to do more things in less time, then that's not going to feel good either. So so that is definitely key. Couple of things. There's the I like the key. I always appreciate you sharing your keyword or your phrase for the year, Paul, because it's something that you don't. It's not a one and done with you. I'll hear your word throughout the year that we talk.
Yeah.
So kudos on that. I'm gonna adopt a keyword for my year, because I think that's over and above an explicit goal or vision for a 12-week year. A word is definitely a nice anchor to have as well. So I'll definitely I'll be stealing that one. And then the other thing about like you said, feeling pressured because things are sort of being compressed. The 12-week year book talks about compression a little bit, and I think a lot of people in that sort of sprint methodology think of it as an efficiency bonus, because you're getting less done you're getting more done in a smaller defined time. I'm sure that's probably Elon Musk's one of his modes of operation. If it takes you 3 weeks, why can't you do it in 3 days? Right. And that's not to dismiss it out of hand, because sometimes the book 10x, 10x is easier than 2x. Ben Hardy's book talks about that. If you expand an objective and sort of say, well, what would it take to get 10 times the outcome versus 2 times the outcome? You might find that the jump between 2 times and 10 times may only be 10%. And in that way, you can be innovative in terms of how you approach something. If a client's going to pay you 10 times what you charge, what could you deliver to equate to that 10 times value? And you might realize it may only be 50% more of your work. So I get that in terms of efficiencies. The danger is that it becomes mathematical, and people go, well, everything falls into that formula. And if I say the plane is going to take 10 hours to get from Manchester to Montego Bay, and someone goes, why can't it take 5? I'll be like, I'll be like, because it can't, it's not a rocket. It wouldn't
Yet.
stop. It wouldn't stop if it took 5 hours to get there. It would go past Jamaica and end up in the South America or something, right? So the whole point is that it's not mathematical. You can't. There's going to be a finite element to it. And to Claire's point, it's define. You define it. You define the scope of productivity by the outcome that you want. It's no point being productive for the wrong outcome, which means that if you've got to almost define the vision and define success, what success means, before you can be productive about it. You can get about the work of getting what you want. So yeah, there's a lot of elements to that. It's I hate for people to just think, oh, I'm just going to get more done in less time, and they go, oh, that will free me up. That will free me up. What do you want?
Or kind of that means I'm being super productive. You are to a point, but it's then when you could have completely burn out, having stressed yourself out by being so super productive. And yeah, exactly. As you say, what cost?
That's interesting. So it kind of seems like, from what you both are saying, like the root thing that it's really trying to teach people is about like clarity. Because I remember one of the most, like, I don't want to say it was difficult, but it was challenging, because it really caused me to like reframe the way that I viewed everything. And it was kind of, I guess I would say, the lesson that really taught me that time is like relative. But a couple years back, I had auditioned for a speaking competition, and they had said, like, you have to do your talk in like 1 minute. And most people who are like speakers, they'll do like a keynote or whatever for like an hour or whatever it is. And as I'm doing this thing, I'm like, okay, so they're basically asking me take my message in 1 hour to 1 minute. But what was interesting was, when I did it, I ended up actually finishing my talk in like 57 seconds or something. And it kind of taught me that we have so much more time than we think we do, when you're like clear on what you're trying to kind of do with it. And it seems like that's the big takeaway, both from not just like what you're saying, Claire, about like choosing the right things to do, but also having that sense of clarity in terms of like why you even want to do things. Because going back to Steve's point about like you constantly play the numbers game, efficiency is kind of like a dangerous thing, because especially if you're like a perfectionist, like you can always try to one up what you did. It's like, oh, I did this in like a week, let me try to do it in like 4 days. And you do that, and it becomes this kind of, I don't know if addiction is the right word, but you just are always trying to like do better than you ever did. And I think that's interesting.
Yeah. And the thing is, we have false comparators now. We have things that we're comparing ourselves to that are patently false. They've, if I go out to AI or social media and ask a question, it's going to optimize for the best result it can find, whether that result is true or not. So if we hear that time and time again with the 4-minute mile. Roger Bannister did a 4-minute mile. I mean, doctors said you can't run a 4-minute mile. They said if you run a 4-minute mile, your heart's going to pop out your chest, right? You're going to die. So you're advised not to run a 4-minute mile. And I guess I mean, I don't know what the full there's probably great stories about Bannister's approach to it. He was a doctor himself, right? He was a medical student, I think. And he had a pace runner. So he had someone who wasn't going to finish the race run ahead of him to set the time, to set the pace. So I can see there's periodization there in just the race itself in terms of how we approached it. And obviously training as an athlete. There's training involved. And then once he broke it, that same year, I don't know, 20 people, 20 people or 30 people broke it. And now you got high schoolers that are doing sub 4 minute miles, right? So there is all that to say that yes, there's a point where you can pursue excellence, but there's a risk that if it's not your vision and it's not your goal, then hitching your wagon to someone else's, real or fictitious, outside of your scope, is not going to serve you. I'm not running a 4 minute mile anytime soon, unless I'm riding it on a bike or something. So it's one of those things that it can end up becoming a false comparison, and that becomes a difficult situation. Yeah, we said clarity and vision are definitely key elements. Once you've understood and defined success in your own terms. And I think that's one of the things, you spend more times going around the world, going around the earth, more years around the earth, it feels that, for me, bringing more stories and more episodes in my life to ready recall is important for me. That's why I think the periodization of the 12 weeks is better for me than me looking at 12 months, calendar months, because I get more bites of the cherry, and that's important in terms of informing how I live, what's important to me and what I value. And then you set up your milestones accordingly, as opposed to sort of thinking, I know January is going to be, the gyms are full on January, and then February they're empty, right? People have paid they've got the New Year special paid for the year, and the gym owners are going, yeah, great, we'll have nothing to do in March, because it'll be just cold enough and not warm enough for people to think that I've got to get my beach body ready. We might get a little bit of a surge in the summer months because it's nicer weather. But that whole thing about having the period not suit the goal, and just people arbitrarily go, yeah, it's a year. I won't do it. I never did New Year's resolutions. I wasn't one of those. I had an intention, but never a resolution. And those are two very different things.
Absolutely.
Thoughts, Claire?
I was kind of thinking it's about the kind of the habits. For me, it's about the habit side of things, which is why my next webinar is all about habits, and particularly at the beginning of the year, it's that kind of goal setting. If you're going to create resolutions, what do they actually look like? We kind of have this word, New Year resolutions, and yeah, I'm someone that does set resolutions or intentions, or it's then how you make that a reality, so that you don't say, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week, and then there are so many stats out there, by sort of middle of January, by February, everyone's given up, having paid their subscription for the year, given up because it just doesn't fit. It's how you make those resolutions stick or workable, or something that is actually more realistic. And it's kind of the same with goal setting. It's don't set completely unrealistic goals that you're not going to be able to achieve, like you were saying, running the 4-minute mile. So
it's definitely key. I mean, and for people listening, I mean, it's the time of the year to sort of, I'm going to land the plane here. We're an hour in. I normally finish at the bottom of the hour, but just to land in the plane here, this is the time. I really appreciate Claire bringing up the time of the year, that it's that, as we've sort of land the year, the calendar year anyway, with a celebratory season, where we connect with loved ones and see friends and family, and hopefully not indulge too much in the commerciality of it. Don't get into debt over Christmas. I had something on the news about pay now, buy now, pay later, BNPL schemes in America are taking off. Everyone's still feeling that they need to celebrate Christmas, and retailers and maybe some unscrupulous lenders are out there offering, deals where you can buy now, pay later. And that is usually, it's the same as the gym thing, right? You go you could end up falling short and still paying for your Christmas presents in March or June.
or by the next year.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I mean, that's something financially I've always done, which in this whole sort of credit industry economy, people don't really think about that. If you buy now, pay later, what's the interest rate? You're going to end up paying 3 times what it would actually have cost you. And
I subscribe to, if I have it, use it. If I don't, then I'll find a way to be okay without it. It's just, it doesn't seem, that deferred element doesn't seem to work or sit well with me. So certainly don't get in debt over Christmas, please. Connect with somebody. I know sometimes Christmas can be the loneliest time of the year too, which is an irony. My kid, everyone's grown up in my family, so I'm not a host for Christmas. I'm glad to be going somewhere for my Christmas this year, but get connected. There's no need, if you want to be connected in some ways. There's lots of places to do that. Seek out the help as well. It's the time of the year people are, their pride, the pride or shame or the circumstance can sometimes lead them to be, face unusual hardship, especially this time of the year, where everyone's assumed to be happy families and doing stuff, and it kind of sits heavier this time of the year. And especially if you lost loved ones at this time of the year. I know a few friends that the holidays can some to be bittersweet because a loved one's not around anymore. So I'm definitely being sensitive to that. But on the whole, it's the end of 2025. Every year feels like a science fiction movie. us people born in the 19s, right?
I know. So when people sort of say, "Oh yeah, the sort of 20-something was 20 years ago," and you go, "No, surely not."
So definitely, enjoy the season. Take the rest where you can get it, and we look forward to 2026 with gusto and hope in the future. Final thoughts, Paul, Claire?
Have a fantastic time in Jamaica with your family, and happy holiday season, Christmas, New Year, whatever you like to call it, whether you're celebrating or not. And I think it's good reaching out to friends that maybe you haven't contacted for a while. Great time to do that.
Yeah, amen.
Yeah, I think my biggest takeaway from the conversation was something that we had kind of talked about a little bit earlier, of at what cost, right? Because so many times like people get caught up in the comparison game, or comparing like what you see online versus what happens in reality. And the Steve, I love using like your little phrases from our interactions. And I remember we were talking about impossible equals impossible one time, and you had said something that always kind of stuck with me about how possible usually isn't always probable, but it's an option. Like the fact that it's something that it can be achieved is just kind of serves as like evidence, if you will. And I think that was one of the things that I took away from this conversation, is that to do the 12-week year thing or whatever it is, like for a lot of people, it's probably not like what they want to do, right? Probable, but it kind of opens your eyes to like what's possible when you go through it, and just stepping out and entering the unknown. It's always been interesting for me because I know a lot of people like naturally fear what they don't know, the uncharted waters, but I've always just been fascinated, and I guess it kind of goes with my adrenaline junkie persona of wanting to do crazy things, just because I know what happens, like if I stay still, if I do nothing, like I know what's going to happen, and I can look ahead 10, 20, 30 years. I would see it in front of me all the time, and I'm just like, what happened if I go left when everybody's going right? And I think that's what's kind of interesting with what you're saying about the holidays, is that you don't have to do it the way that everybody else is doing it. You can kind of do it your own way and make your own path. And that would be, I think that's the biggest takeaway. If anybody's watching, like, you can do it your way, right?
Yeah.
Create your own rules versus following other people's.
Yeah. And that doesn't, and that's youth talking right there, Claire. You can hear that. You can hear the youth. You can hear the youth in this young man over here. but it's not. Sometimes sometimes they say youth is wasted on the young, right? But
well, I think that's something I would say is, just because we're getting older, I mean, hey, sort of 50's the new 30, 60's the new 40. It's don't let age limit you.
That's
as
what
I've just found out.
That's what I was going to say. You can. There's no better time to create your own path. If there's a saying that says if you're skiing in someone else's tracks, then you're not making a path. You're following someone else's tracks. If you ski on fresh snow, then that's you're making your path. And it may feel a little bit more daunting, but it's your path, and no one else has gone there. It's fresh snow. So on that note, don't be careful if you're out there doing anything strenuous
in the snow.
And we'll catch up. I do want to do another live. It feels so far from Christmas before jumping on another live. So I may shift it to Thursday next week. If I do, I'll get the invite out sooner, and I'll be in the sunshine then. I won't have this.
Yeah.
Awesome.
If the connection stands. But thanks for joining, Claire. Great to see you. Thank you for your contribution, and congrats on the event.
Thank you. Nice to see you both. And
right.
have a great. If we don't see you next week,
yeah,
see you in the new year.
All right, then. Take care. All right, then, Claire. Thanks, Paul. As always, a pleasure.
Good to see you. It was nice meeting you, Claire. If I don't see you guys, have a wonderful holiday season, and I'm sure we'll all interact soon.
Yeah.
Take care.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Take care, everybody. Thanks again.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.